In this video interview, I sit down with Simon Stern, who started off as a self-taught developer, moved into being a bootcamp instructor, from there had gone into big tech, and is now looking at things from the entrepreneurial perspective. So I think it's really cool to sit down and talk with Simon through this because we get to see a different perspective that I don't think that I generally capture in these interviews. I think there's a lot more to software development than just coding and all that kind of stuff that we normally go over. And that really starts to kind of come through in this conversation. So I think that you're really going to enjoy it. So sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Simon, right before we started recording, I had said career journeys. One of the things I love asking guests about. So if you don't mind, as early as you would like to kind of go back in time or as late, up to you. If you want to give us a little bit of background for who you are, where you started, and how you got to where you are currently.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me, first of all. Really appreciate it. So my career journey is relatively sidewindy. I graduated with a degree in biochem, and originally my plan was to be a doctor, go into medicine. And I spent 2 years working as a research assistant and scientist after graduating, and I found out like I hated every part of that life, part of that job. I worked for a doctor. He like pulled me aside one day, and he's like, "Don't go into medicine." He's like, "If you value your life, don't go into medicine." And it really struck me. So um, I kind of had this one day with some friends where we all got really drunk together, and it was like the theme was like, what is Simon going to do with himself? Because I
So
really,
they came together, and
yeah,
this was the event for you to where they're
kind of. I just invited some buddies over, and I was like, I think I'm going to quit my job and also my entire career path. Let's get drunk. And they're like, okay. And
because that's not a small thing, right? That's like you
yeah,
at this up to this point, you're like, this is what I'm doing, and now all of a sudden it's like, no,
yeah,
it's not. But what is it
for
going to
like
be?
all of university, for high school, I sort of had that plan. And so it was like like almost 10 years actually from being a kid and like working in the field. And I think, yeah, it was pretty tough. But 2 weeks after that night, I basically booked actually the next day after that night, I booked a one-way ticket to Australia. And that was my answer to that question. And then 2 weeks later, I was in Australia. And with no job, I'd quit my jobs and was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to live here for a bit and kind of reset. And when I was in Australia, I had like 12 different jobs. I lived there for a year. I was a bricklayer, a truck driver, a cleaner, a driver. I cleaned up a racetrack for a big race. I managed a carnival or helped manage a carnival. I did all kinds of crazy things. The best job was delivery driver by far. And because it's awesome, you like are just kind of on your own listening to the radio outside all day. I got very fit. And on that, in that year, I decided when I go home, like, what do I value? I value kind of my independence as much as possible. And
Mhm.
I value having like some sort of skill, something that actually is a tangible skill, which for a degree in biochemistry, you don't actually get. So you get like a bunch of knowledge, but it's like very weird esoteric knowledge that is only useful in very, very like niche verticals that are not well paying. So
Interesting. Okay.
it sort of led me to software development. I decided, okay, when I'm done with this year, I'm going to go home and I'm going to learn to code. And that's what I did. I went home after the year and I started with JavaScript. I learned about APIs. I learned Angular and a little bit of jQuery. jQuery was not working for me, but I learned Angular and then eventually React and slowly kind of built my way up from there. Like it's kind of a funny story. When I started, I had one friend who had a brother who worked as a dev. Nowadays, everyone's a dev, or at least it feels like there's devs everywhere. But at the time, I had zero technical friends. All my friends were in med school or trying to go to med school. So
Okay.
one of those friends, her brother was a dev, and so I asked him like, "Hey, can I just like hang with you and just kind of learn from you?" And then that turned into me being like, "Hey, can I like go into your office at your workplace and kind of ask them and just see what it's about?" And like I knew nothing about what a dev was coding. I started
Right.
going to every single meetup in the city. Luckily, there's a lot, and just asking and seeing like, is this something that is approachable? And so I went into my friend's office, and they were like a studio, so it was kind of perfect. They had lots of different projects, and after the first day there, and they were cool. They were like, "Yeah, come, like, see what it's all about."
Hmm.
And then after the first day there, I was like, "Can I come back tomorrow?" And the next day, and I basically went in for 3 months straight, 9 to 5, treated it as a job, and eventually they're like, "Hey, like, do you want to try adding some code to this feature?" I'm like, "Sure." And then they're like, "Okay, do you want like a little internship?" And basically, after 6 months, after 3 months, I had a job there, and then after 6 months, like a proper full, like junior dev role, and the rest has kind of been history. I eventually started my own agency, and then I got a really cool job that I did for the last 5 years for a big pharma company in the States, and really, really enjoyed that React Native role. That sort of became my breadbasket, was React Native. Um, and then this year, I decided that I really want to try something new, because I sort of had been like kind of like scrambling to be in the business and then to stay in the business. And then I had this great job. And this year I'm like, okay, let me like really reset. And um, I have been building like my own apps and kind of exploring different ideas. And I lived in Malaysia for 3 months at network school, which, if you know what that is, it's like
I do
biology.
not. No, no.
So the former CTO of Coinbase, Balaji Srinivasan, is like this big crypto um, personality
Okay.
on Twitter, and he started he sort of believes that there's going to be like this, um, like as societies get more and more unstable, people want like smaller communities. So he started
Okay.
like a startup society in Malaysia, and yeah, me and my wife went to go live there for 3 months and met founders from all over the world, and kind of we all like pitched together and like worked on ideas together, and
Wow. That's
that was
really cool.
yeah, that was like by far the coolest thing I'd ever done. I got to like meet Balaji and kind of hang out with this guy a bit, and all of these like really hardcore people. I met like Vitalik, the founder of
Yeah.
Ethereum, and all kinds of people. So yeah, and then that's what I've been doing. So now I'm kind of like building my own apps with some friends and trying to make that work. It's definitely humbled me. It's very, very difficult to make money on the internet.
And I'll have some questions on that because I think that is I think for some people it comes very naturally, and for other people, like I know for myself, absolutely not. Like if you told me before we got on this call, you're like, I have a problem doing this. If I had the perfect coded solution to give you, and I'm like, and it costs even $1, I would feel very uncomfortable being like, I'm trying to help you, but it's only adult. Like everything about that interaction would feel very gross to me. Like I don't know how to do it, and that's
Yes.
something I have to get better at. But that's like I think some people really find it easy, and they're like, no problem. Like you need me to talk to someone to sell something, I got this. And other people are very much like, kind of like me, where it's like, no.
Yeah, I've sort of learned that, and it's sort of interesting because I've also seen like my voice, my ability to like talk
Mm,
to the world has it needs a lot of work basically. And I think selling things like I can make stuff. I've learned how to build things, and I like to build kind of I try and build things that I find interesting, but I find communicating the second I put it out in the world, it's met with like a what? Like what is that? Why do I want
uh,
that? Why do I need that? And so it's
right.
an interesting case of not building to the market, or building to maybe there is a market, but like not being able to communicate with that market. So that's
Yeah.
been my learning, and very humbling learning
That's
this
very
year.
cool, though. That's awesome. I have a couple of questions about your career journey that I think would be helpful to kind of hear your perspective on, because one of the things you said when you're kind of doing that transition into coding was you talked about the different things that you kind of just jumped into, where you're like, I got to go learn this. I'm going to go learn this, that. I'm going to spend time doing that. Like for some people, and I feel like for arguably most people, it's like people are aware. They're like, I need to go learn a language. I need to learn a tech stack. But the act of going through the steps and spending time doing it, it's a pain in the butt. And it's like a lot of the time it can be demotivating. It can feel like, anytime you're trying to pick up something new, you're like, I'm back to a newbie. It's just uncomfortable putting yourself through that. I don't know if this is something you've reflected on, but like, what kind of drove you during that time where you're like, I got to do it, or was it just a pain in the butt the whole time, and you kind of just made it through to the other side?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it was sort of like I had to do it or
Mm,
I had no other option because I felt like the world of going back to being like a clinical researcher or working in a lab just felt so just that door was closed to me. Like I couldn't go back. I didn't have any other kind of skills, but this was something I knew it was sort of like you it's very deterministic. Like if you learn this, you can get a job doing that. And that was like very comforting to me. So I just decided like and I made it very project based. So I
mm,
actually also spent like a year and a half as a boot camp instructor and I kind of have a lot of opinions about boot camps, but this was like pre boot camp and it was very project based because even right at the beginning I was like, oh, like I'm on Twitter a lot, so I want to build like a bot that organizes different Twitter groups or lets me do that. And I didn't know if that was a possible thing to do, but I just started building in that direction. And basically, until I'd exhausted that idea or exhausted that direction, but really basic stuff like, okay, how do I show a list of tweets? How do I
mm.
style the list of tweets? I want to click on one of those items in the list. Like these are things that would take me days, but it felt and it was painful. Like it was wake up, do this, do it until 9 p.m. at night, and then know what you have to do the next day. Um, but I did feel a very strong sense of like I can see the finish line,
Right.
and that kind of kept me going. This year is very very different because it's you can't see the finish line. There's like it's not as obvious. There's
Right.
certain steps that you can do in um, like outside of writing the code, but it's a different kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for different people, they'll have different motivators, right? So what you're describing is like, at least from what I'm hearing, is that if you know there is a finish line and you believe that there are a set of steps to get you there, it's like, okay, the steps might not
Yeah.
be easy, they might not be fun, but like you're like, I can get through these steps if I keep putting in the time. I'll just keep doing that. And along the way, you can feel and see that that finish line is approaching. So like that's like I don't know, like a good sort of feedback loop for you to be like, it's moving in the right direction. Whereas for different people, they might say like, maybe that finish line isn't so obvious because they're like, I'm told that this is supposed to happen, I don't see it getting any closer. And then getting that motivation could be more challenging. But I think that's really cool to hear that really clicked for you, and then you were like, okay, like I got to put in the time and do it. um the I don't think for everyone, but I've definitely seen like a theme, and I feel like this is kind of human nature, where it's like, I hey, like I did the tutorial and like I spent the week doing this, and like I don't know, I don't have a job yet, and like, I was kind of expecting that I had to put in my week or my month of coding, and it's like it's not quite that easy. It's not like you just do it for a little bit and then it all just falls into place. It's like this, for some people this takes a very long time, and
Hmm.
that's kind of normal. And I think that maybe as humans, like we're very much like, what is the shortcut, right? You've done this before, so like tell me the shortcut so you can save me all this time. And I think that sometimes it just really doesn't work like that. It's got to put in the time and the effort. So
Yeah, yeah. I find like it's also kind of changed a lot since then because then boot camps proliferated and sort of sold this kind of fake dream, fake promise, like 3 months and then you get a tech job. And I worked at a boot camp for a year, and then I worked at the U of T boot camp, which was unfortunately like just worse. And I
mm,
think there is definitely this sense of it was very different. The expectations and sort of the way that people approached it. Um, I think because of that structure, it almost like the incentives were all misaligned. Where like for me, like I had to make that job work, or I wasn't going to have a roof over my head. I was very much like backed into a corner, but I think it became this false promise of like, oh, 3 months and then you can get a tech job. And I just don't think it's ever worked that way. I think you have to like fight for your life for anything that is worth having. And, a 6-figure tech job that you can work from home, tapping away at a computer screen is like, that's a big deal. That's actually a really, it's a very like prestigious, like nice quality of life that you can have for yourself. So I do believe that trying to sell that as like an easier thing to achieve kind of watered down the whole kind of industry suffered from it. I think there was like too many people now at like a skill level that was at the tutorial stage, as you said, which I don't believe in tutorials too much. Like I think they're a good way to, learn the API or like the syntax of a certain feature, but you have to build your own thing. You always have
Yeah.
to build your own thing. And that is the only thing that will actually like teach you.
Yeah, it's funny. I fully agree with that. As someone who makes a lot of YouTube videos that are a lot of tutorials, I'll have people that will say like, "Hey, can you give me the code for that?" And I'm like, I actually don't want to, not because it's extra work to do, but like I don't want to because I don't think that that's actually going to help you in the way that I've intended. Like my goal with the tutorials is like there's some where I'm like, if I can unblock you doing something great, but ideally it's just to get you thinking about things. Like I don't want to give you the step by step thing, on repeat for all of these things and kind of make it feel like a false promise, even with tutorials. But yeah, I think I agree with the boot camp points you're making. It's not, I'm not like, I don't think boot camps are a terrible thing, but I think that a lot of them started kind of being a little bit misleading with the expectations. And I don't think that that's fair. I think that there are plenty of people that have gone through boot camps and that absolutely accelerated their learning and their skill sets. And that
Yeah.
is great. But to tell people, do this for 3 months, you will get a 6-figure job. I'm like, you can't guarantee anyone that unless you're the one hiring them after for 6 figures. Then sure,
Yeah.
guarantee whatever you want. But if it's not you, then like that's just not. It's just simply not fair and it's misleading. So
Yeah, and I do think I mean it's there's a lot to be said about accelerating your learning, and a lot of really successful colleagues I know started in a boot camp, and then they were
mhm.
very something about like coding drew them in, and it's always interesting to me when I meet people from like really different backgrounds. I think because of my own very different background, who I have a friend who was an architect, and then she really liked design, and she got into coding and found the design, like saw the design in code, and would never have made that connection, but stuff like stories like that are really interesting. And then those people always go on to make like really impressive things and aesthetic things because they have that outside like idea for it.
Yeah, they bring different perspective into what they're building in code, and I think that's super cool. It's one of the things like when I talk with guests, especially that have sort of come from different backgrounds or had careers for a while in something and whatever life event and they switch over. I think the perception is that it's like, oh well, I'm starting late, I'm going to be worse, I'm disadvantaged, and like sure you're starting late compared to someone who was coding at a young age, and that's one thing, but you're also bringing in a completely different perspective, completely different skill sets, and it's not like those are zero value. In fact, those can be tremendously valuable compared to what some other people kind of have in their skill sets from purely focused on writing code. So I think yeah, the more people I talk to, like one of my goals with doing sessions like this is to kind of expose some of that, to be like, see, like this person wasn't coding when they were 5 years old, and like things are going pretty good. Like it's
Yeah,
okay to have a different journey.
yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's interesting nowadays too because everything has kind of been flipped on its head with vibe coding. I'm
Yes.
curious what your thoughts are on that as someone who like makes this kind of content with career journeys, tutorials. Like, how has that affected your perception?
Yeah, it's I think it's interesting. I have a handful of different perspectives, and I think the challenge right now is like, given that it's early, one of my like sort of philosophies in general is like I try to keep an open mind about things and try to challenge my own perspective from different angles. I might have a strong opinion about something, but I'm like, if I don't have it backed by like data, then I'm like, I must keep an open mind. So to give you an example, with like vibe coding, I think there are absolutely opportunities to leverage it that I think work really well, and might vary from skill level. So for example, I've been programming for a long time. I will vibe code things that like I don't have a genuine interest in spending time learning right now. Sometimes I vibe code things where it's like, um, to give me a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to do. And I'm trying to think of a better way to explain this. It might be something I want to learn about. Some of the videos I was making recently for YouTube were in C sharp. We have the Roslyn compiler, and we can build analyzers that do like static analysis of code. I'm like, I wanted to learn about this for forever, but I simply have not made time to go do it. So I vibe coded a bunch of these because I needed some. Now I'm at this point where I'm like, oh crap, I don't know how these work. And I have a bunch of them in my code base. So like I should now like go spend time like learning about them. They're operating, but that's fine. But at the skill level I have in my experience, I feel okay doing that. That I'm like, I'm not in a spot where I'm like, oh crap, I'm screwed. I get a little bit more concerned when there are people that are more junior vibe coding that they're not taking the opportunity to try and learn what's being produced. So they see it as a way, and I don't mean to, I'm not saying all juniors do this. I'm just saying this is a sort of one of the trends that makes me a little nervous is yes, you can use AI tools to produce code. That's great. But if your sort of pattern is produce the code and then produce more code and produce more code, and every step you're like further and further away from understanding what's going on, that part makes me nervous. So the point I want to bring up about challenging my perspective on this is I don't think that that's a good approach personally for someone who's more junior. I think that you should be trying to, as soon as you don't understand something, go talk to the LLM, ask it questions, ask it to explain things. That's what I would recommend. So you understand some of the fundamentals. But the thing I want to challenge my own perspective with is like, even when I was going through university and stuff for computer engineering, they were teaching us, we had some classes on doing some assembly. We had some classes on building we didn't build a compiler, but we built like we built a like I can't remember what the names of the tooling is called. Like basically like we worked with grammar of languages and stuff. And like, is that useful information? It's like it's interesting. I'm sure it was helpful, but could I have literally left out that part of my learning and been okay? 100%. And I'm wondering, will we see in 5, 10 years that there were people that came into software development, literally vibe coded their way through the next 5 to 10 years, and they're doing great? Like, I don't personally want to believe that because I think it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm trying to keep an open mind because I genuinely think that we could see something like that, and no one has a crystal ball. So like,
Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of opinions around it as well. I think because of like my background and even my focus. Like I've learned this year especially, I love products. I love product design and like UX. I don't mind coding. Sometimes I like coding. I think when I'm solving a specific interesting problem, but I don't love coding for the sake of it. And that was like really hard for me to get to because it sort of becomes a part of your identity that you have the skill and this ability and that's your job and career and all of that. But I realized this year it's like I would actually, if I could be like a product manager who codes, that is probably my ideal. I find the business side very interesting and all of that. But to your point, I think we're already really seeing that. Like I hang out in a lot of discords of all the vibe coding tooling, and I'm kind of DMing people randomly and just being like, what are you working on? And how's it going? And these people are really interesting. Like there'll be someone whose background is sales in commercial insurance, and he has built a platform and he has users and he has MRR because it's like a simple CRUD application that it's not like anything special that he's building, but he understands the shape that it needs to be for other commercial insurance salespeople, and already knows how to sell. So he just built this basic thing. It looked very vibe codey, like the purple gradients and all of that, and you know, and but it worked. And then it worked, and like probably the API keys are just like right there, hard coded. He doesn't care. He's making money. He's very happy, and I think there is a lot of that. Maybe not as like publicized or published, but even Peter Levels is like a great example where he built a flight simulator and didn't have any experience in that. I think he vibe coded the whole thing the whole way through, and it kind of sparked that like mini wave of AI games. I think the abstraction kind of keeps climbing up higher and higher until it
Mhm.
just is like a direct interface with our creativity and our ability to express ourselves. But um, yeah, people will be building things and have no idea what is happening under the surface, and it really just comes down to like their ability to talk through it and express their ideas. And like another anecdote to that is, I have a friend who he runs like 7 Airbnbs, and he really is convinced that he can build a better like guest management software. Zero coding experience, and he asked me for help, and I was like, not really like my thing. Um, but I was like, why don't you go on Lovable and just start seeing the shape of it, because that's a
Yeah.
good place to start. And he got the shape of it, and then he got the dashboard, and he got authentication working, and he has a database, it and it actually is like now quite complex, where it can read incoming emails from Gmail. You can connect your Gmail account. It can parse just the emails from Airbnb, respond with an LLM, um, and then reply. And it he built it, and it actually works, and it's like very impressive. So, and he still doesn't know what he's doing. He just knows how to talk to the machine. And like, I don't think he's ever opened Cursor. I think he's done the entire thing in Lovable.
Wow.
Never seen the code. Um, and I think like there's going to be more and more of that, and it's kind of uncomfortable
Yeah.
for people like us who like went through a lot of pain and suffering to be able to do these things. And there'll always be a role, if you like know what you're doing, you have a higher bar of like what you can say to the machine. But
Right.
I do think like if someone else just has a better idea, you're now on like an even playing field. So it's crazy times.
Yeah, I do think that it's fascinating, right? I think this is why I was trying to say like I need to keep an open mind, because I think you said it very well. It's like it is uncomfortable to think of a world like that. Part of me is like when you're kind of talking about some of those things that have been vibe coded and put together. You made the joke like, oh, the API keys are probably like fully exposed, and it's like th- I wonder genuinely, like, is are we just getting to the point where we're going to be kind of pointing fingers and laughing at people that have security vulnerabilities like this? And if so, like, is the like genuinely is the solution, instead of, hey man, like you have to know the fundamentals and like avoid this kind of stuff up front, like you're making stupid mistakes, and if you just knew better you would do better? Like, are we going that path, or is it like, hey, like people are going to keep doing this, so like let's build things into the AI tooling that literally go and like attack this kind of stuff and make sure that it's not proliferating in code bases? And
100%.
like I
Yeah.
feel like we're going the second direction, because it's very easy for us to sit back passively and just kind of point fingers at people being like, oh, clearly vibe coded, like I see your credit card information's like fully exposed. It's like, okay, like how do we build the guardrails into the AI tooling to prevent things like this? Now, is it always going to be bulletproof? Like, no, but I mean, like humans screw this stuff up too. So I don't know. I feel like there is a future where this stuff becomes more rock solid, that we have more people able to build things. It's just uncomfortable to think that um, that might be the case. And I think that some people hear that and they get concerned that like, well, does that mean that my job isn't relevant anymore? Like, am I going to be obsolete? And I'm like, I don't. I'm well. Maybe before I even answer that, what are your thoughts for people that are like, they seem concerned because they feel like they're going to be obsolete because of AI and how it's being used.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that was like a big theme that I had for myself this year. When I started the year, I was like, I need to learn a trade because that's sort of where I started. I'm like, oh my God, like it's sort of easy to see the trend line and say, okay, today it can make components, tomorrow it can, refactor files, the next day it can refactor an entire code base. And it can. And like I do 90% of my coding now through chat, like through chatting with Cursor. And I have Cursor open and I'm like, add a scratch card feature to the app here. And then it'll do some thing with, React Native Skia and, gesture handler and pan responder. And I won't even, before I would look at the code and now I'm just like, I just try it. And if it works, I'm like, good job. If not, I'm like, no mistakes. 10K MRR, no mistakes, please.
Yeah.
And I'll do that like maybe 2 or 3 more times, and if it's still not working, I'll like be like, ugh, and then go and look at the code and try and fix it. And it's usually something simple, and I can fix it pretty quickly. But it is still quicker for me to just do that like texting part. And I think that as an anecdote to just be like there's so at the top level there's lots of problems. There's still hundreds of thousands of millions of problems to be solved and to be solved with software. And I'm trying to think of it from that perspective. Like, are all software problems solved? No. So that means there's still like value to be accrued and earned by solving these problems for engineers. And the best engineers can solve the hardest problems always. So that's kind of like evergreen. So they will always be compensated highly for that. As the problems get simpler and simpler, there's like less value to be earned for that.
Sure.
And then some of the problems are like interesting because like calorie trackers and Cal AI is a great example. Um, Blake Anderson did not know how to code. He vibe coded Cal AI into like the top charting calorie tracking app and a good calorie tracking app. It's at first it was like kind of a gimmick, like take a picture of your food. This is how many calories, but it's actually a very high quality app. Great onboarding. I've like studied it a lot for my own apps, and um, the idea that like MyFitnessPal or Lose It or any of these have like solved people's calorie tracking needs is not true. Like this new upstart came, did a slightly better job with a slightly better angle, and um, you know earned a ton of money from it. So I think as you get down from like the hardest problems to problems like that, where there's room for a lot of solutions, and then there's also room for like taste, and people want to do it in different ways. There's ways to like earn value from that. So that's my answer in that sense. I think in terms of like big companies and how that works, I really have no idea. Like I think companies in general, it's like a whole other topic. Like I worked at a relatively large bureaucratic organization where, and I saw it was a startup when we started. It was like 50 people, and then it was like 300 people, and which is still like small, but it was within a bigger thing. And you just see how decisions get abstracted away and all of that, and work becomes very weird, where it's like you get a ticket, and just the management of this ticket is like half the work week, and the actual work is like, so I don't really know what's going to happen at companies. I would hope that they get more streamlined, but I don't like, that's a human problem, and maybe that's a human problem that gets solved by someone building $1 billion software.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of segue. The that kind of growth trajectory at a company. We didn't chat about this beforehand, but before I worked at Microsoft, I worked at a startup. I was employee like 7 or 8, and by the time I left, it was like 250 people. So yeah, not a huge company by the end, but like what you're describing, like very familiar with that. Going from like it feels like there's work that has to be done, so people are just doing the work, and as the company's growing, there's more red tape around things, there's more process, there's more bureaucracy, and it just kind of happens because there are more people. I don't think it's ever the intention where people are like, let's just add more layers of complexity for no good reason. Like there's, usually motivation for it. I see it exaggerated at Microsoft, but just to give you an example, it's like there's stuff that's like compliancy concerns or security concerns, and like at Microsoft, if I had someone on my team who spun up a new service or something and there was a compliance or security issue, like that's not like a oops, like the no users we have are going to interact with that. Like that could be like a big security breach where there could potentially be many users impacted. So like we have to have those levels of like red tape and things like that. So it's kind of like I feel like it's a natural thing to happen. I don't love that kind of thing, and I'm not saying there's no way to make it more lean, but I think we do see some of that stuff kind of creep up more naturally. But um,
Mhm.
I guess
There's there's so much to say about that stuff because there is what you say of like there is good reason for it sometimes, but I've also seen like it can be the case of like territory and politics and
yeah,
just like weird decision making, and I found that so fascinating because it it's like the curse of success is that you have to have more people to manage a bigger thing, but then the thing itself like does start to degrade in various ways.
100%. Yeah, and like the when you get into situations where there's like politics, where there's like territory is such a good word for it. It starts to get kind of bizarre, and I feel like there's the incentives are misaligned. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's smaller companies, it at least to me it felt like it was easier to kind of have everyone rally behind this is the mission of the company. You might have sub teams and stuff. It's not like a 250-person engineering team or something, but obviously even if the engineering team is like a smaller part of the company, say it's out of a 250-person company, it's say it's 100 people, just to make up a number. Like you're not having 100-person single engineering team. There's sub teams working on different products or
Mhm.
feature sets, whatever. But even with that, like people are very much aligned to the business. It seemed like it was easy to do that. When you have like different business units, and like you have people that find it big tech, everyone's like extremely focused on like their career path, which I
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
think is wrong. I think it's good to be like, how do I progress in my career? But when the incentives for your career progression do not seem to be aligned with like the mission of the company, I think you're going to have people that are very much focused on themselves. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of incentivizing that. So,
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I found it to be like by the end, I was still like an IC. I was contributing on, very like specific features, but because I had seen it all kind of like every aspect of it, I got really fascinated with how things slowed down in various
mhm,
ways. Like, and that sort of became a bigger interest of mine at the company. And I had a chance to be a TPM for a bit actually, and kind of run our teams like board and like interface with other teams. And I really wanted that experience just to see what that is like to like have to deal with dependencies basically
right.
and manage people's expectations. And it's like we want to release on this date, but we have this feature that has to go into the app, so like you have to wait for us, but we can't wait to, like we have this marketing thing and the marketing team is now. And yeah, I found that very, very interesting. I don't know if I would want to make a career out of it, but I I see that there's something there because I think like orchestration is probably one of those problems where you can really create miracles from like really high quality orchestration. And companies like Tesla or SpaceX are good examples to me of like very, I think SpaceX more so, where it's like if everyone is like super aligned on this thing that is like kind of 90% failure, and you have it in these like tranches of like we are going to work towards this thing and it's either success or rapid failure. Most people, if it's like rapid failure, they would leave or blame each other or whatever. But it's like if you can maintain coherent, and then every one of these parts has to like fit together perfectly.
Mhm.
um, I think maintaining coherence in a company is one of those things I've become very interested in.
Yeah, it is truly fascinating. Yeah, I'm curious. And one of your notes that you had sent over was like for big companies and moving faster, do you envision that AI can or is already playing a role in that, or uh, when in from your note, is this more like an open curiosity where you're like, I wonder if this is a kind of solution? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think it's like it's right now it's still open, but I think it has to be like it eventually has
Hmm.
to be because what we can do, if you can monitor the entire Slack conversation ecosystem of an organization of arbitrary size, any size, and an AI can look at every single conversation and every single like pull request and every single ticket all at once. And we're not like far from it being able to do that with much higher clarity. It should be able to like draw kind of I don't know what the right word is, but like draw the relationships or the conclusions that make the most sense for like insights to like actually it's that joke of like, oh, we extract business insights and
Yeah.
this, but like
What do you do here?
yeah, like if you had something that could actually do that and be like looking at all your tickets in a sprint and say like actually these three don't need to be done this week, and um, it doesn't. I don't know if it solves a problem because then you maybe have someone who's like, oh, but those tickets like mean something for my career, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna override the AI and push them through. Um, but I do feel like the tools are actually there. I think one place where it's used really well right now is like customer review, summarization, and like contextual extraction,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing as like a company. Like a company's internal comms are basically like kind of customer review for that business. So I feel like there's some level there that we're not quite reaching where these things can be extracted and like higher value can be drawn out from these bigger complex orgs. But I think the person who's going to do that or the team that's going to do that like needs to have really good insight into how these orgs work with like a lot of experience working with them. So it's like a problem I find interesting, but like I would not be able to solve it because I don't think I'm built to like work at Microsoft for for 10 years. It would not work for me.
But that's, I think, a really interesting point, right? I think a lot of us, especially as developers, the focus is the LLMs are working the other direction for us. We're telling it stuff, and we're saying, go write code, go make things. And what you were just describing is actually the other direction, which is here's a lot of data, like draw insights from it. And I guess I'm curious, like I do think that AI has been very effective at that kind of thing. I think there's still lots of room for improvement, but if you think about it, like it's like almost like standard features now we have in like Slack, Teams, and whatever. It's like your meetings recorded, you get automatic like summary transcription kind of stuff going on. Like that's super effective to be able to go back and, I think I work at Microsoft, so I use Teams, but like having, different parts in the recording where it's like who's talking, you can jump to things, and like it's just like that kind of insight from a conversation is so powerful. I do think what's very sort of interesting as a next level is like I don't know if we have the right signals, or if we do, if we're properly feeding them into like AI tools yet to be able to like to get the insights from that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like if the AI is very good at summarizing things, are we even giving it the right sets of information to work with? I don't know if that's something that's been solved necessarily. An example is like, at least I don't know if I can't speak for all of Microsoft because it's like a billion people, but um, at least in our org, we do something that's called like a signals survey, and we do this a couple of times per year. And it's like a handful of questions. It's a pretty light survey, and it's to try and gauge, like, I mean, the word's kind of there. It's like to gauge your engagement and like how much you're enjoying work, if you're aligned with work, if things are kind of moving in the right direction for you, and like therefore your organization is like a good place to work. And so we have a survey like this a couple of times per year, but like the questions are always evolving, and they are just like multiple choice survey questions. Like, I don't know, I'm not trying to say it's like a bad tool. I actually get a lot of value from that, but is that the best kind of thing that we could do to get data? like a couple of times per year, a handful
Yeah.
of multiple choice survey questions versus like, could we, and people might get spooked by this, so just fair warning, is there more that we could be doing on a regular basis? Like, could something be watching team chats and being like, the tone in this chat seems to be like it's positive, and like, no, you know what, we hit, I'm just making this up, we hit April of this year, and since April to October, like the tone has been very negative and whatever. Like maybe there's indicators like this where we can be doing it more regular, we have more signal, and we can just draw more conclusions from that. I wonder if we can start to see more stuff like that, but I think people get
Yeah.
scared.
I find it, yeah, and that's such a great example. That's such a great example because there's so many elements there to like unpack where it's like, on the one hand, people are like, they don't listen to us enough. And then you're like, okay, give us feedback weekly. And they're like, oh, this is too burdensome.
Yep.
So it's like, kind of people are never really happy with like, there is no happy medium. It's also, you have such a large amount of people at that point to need this tool that you're going to have distribution of like how people feel about it. And you are not going to make everyone happy. You kind of want to aim for, 60 to 75% of people enjoy it. We had similar tools, compliance. I don't know if compliance is the right word, but like the usage of them was very low.
Mm.
And every quarter or whatever, we'd have like or maybe it was like once a month, it was like this meeting, an all hands, like, hey, like you guys aren't filling out this form, how can we get you to fill out this form? And everyone's like,
Get rid of
I
the
hate
form.
the form. Yeah, I hate the form, but also listen to me more.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what if you had like a Clippy who was just your personal concierge at work who you could just always talk to. He's always there. He's not going to bug you too much, but sometimes he'll be like, hey, like I really need some insight from you. And he's like friendly and great, but you also know that he is like HR behind him. He's like this monster that you don't act. He's not actually your friend, and you don't trust him, and you probably don't even respect him because you know he's just like. And that's the thing. It's like, is he just he is by definition just trying to extract the most amount of value from you, and he's like, I only want you happy because then you'll do your best work. Like if there's a research study tomorrow that people do their best work when they're miserable, like I will make you miserable, and then,
Yeah.
and then you'll so it's like and then there's the whole like surveillance thing. Like people don't like to feel like they're being watched, they want to feel like they're being trusted, and so it's hard. And maybe whatever we have right now is it just doesn't have the right shape to like actually help in this way. But I think the thing that would help is coming, and there's lots of like we live in the age of miracles now. It really is, and there's lots of new ideas that we are like kind of on the stepping stones of that we could maybe reach. But even things like a personal agent, and there is still Clippy maybe, but you have your own agent. And so instead of you talking to Clippy all day, your agent, which does not belong to the company, you bought it from a separate service who manages personal work agents. And that agent advocates for you every day. And so you're working, you're doing your thing, you're having your meetings, your transcripts, whatever. And then your agent is like, hey, Clippy, like, we're doing great. Everything's looking good. Because look at what we said here, or look at this work. And it's basically like your daily advocate. And then Clippy's like, are you sure? Like, and they sort of can like go back and forth. Stuff like that, I feel like is pretty sci-fi right now, but I think we could start to see versions of that where it's sort of like an allowable interface for how we can do better as bigger teams, but like in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting challenge, right? I think people just there's concerns about how much effort goes into stuff. There's concerns about privacy. And I'm not saying these are like invalid concerns. Like everyone is absolutely entitled to all of these different opinions. So, it's hard to do at scale. Like if you were to talk to me and maybe a couple of other people, like there's some stuff like if it's at work, I'm like I assume I don't have privacy. So like if you want to monitor my personal chats, like okay, like I'm talking at work, like that's fine. I also worked at a digital forensics company for 8 years, and like I'm like, I have a different view of like data and, and sort of privacy associated with data because of that. And I acknowledge that's not the same opinion that everyone else has. But for me, I might be totally fine doing that kind of stuff. What I don't want is something bothering me all the time, because I would be
Yeah.
like, don't distract me, like leave me alone. Um, so
That's
like,
sort of the difference. Yeah, it's like because obviously, like you're on a work computer anyway at work, and like all of that is obviously their property. But it's sort of the difference is it's like it feels like there's somebody in the room just standing there like watching over you,
yeah.
and that's the difference. It's not like it's passive data being put out; it's reactive, and yeah, I
Well,
feel
how
like
is
that's
that
where
data going to be used, right? Because it's one thing to say that they can access it, but sometimes when you use the analogy of like someone else being in the room, that makes it feel like someone is waiting for you to do something so they can go, like, got you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's like
100%.
not supposed to be the intention for what we were just talking through. It's like, can we get insights to figure out how to make people happy so that they can work better? Not we're waiting for you to slip up so that we can go do something. But then the problem is like, I mean, if you have technology that can do one, like why would you not have technology that can do the other? It's a
Yeah.
slippery slope, and I think that makes people concerned, which is fair.
Yeah. I think it'll just come down to values and like where you work, and different companies will do different things, and I love the free market for that. Like there'll be different approaches, and I think if you are lucky enough to find a company that like values your independence and ability to just like work on your own versus a place that feels like it needs to like kind of watch you through the camera and like have like a heart rate monitor on you to see like tracking your eyes. There's different places, and so hopefully there is enough of the former that it is like still there's a lot of people that get to work at places like that. I know there will be tons of the latter. There today are tons of companies that make it really kind of onerous on their employees. So
Right.
um, yeah, that and that's maybe what like abundance and the future look like is not that there's no bad. I think that's kind of impossible, but that there is like a lot more good. And I think we're getting like a lot more entrepreneurship and solo builders because of like AI tooling. So maybe more people can build their own things and work for themselves and kind of earn money without having to join something that isn't aligned with how they want to live.
Right. And I think you used a great word, and I think that's a good focus for my thoughts for kind of wrapping up is like abundance, right? I think a lot of people see AI as something that's quite the opposite of abundance. They're like, it's the end. There's no more software development. Like, it's very much like confining and restricting and closing off. But I personally think abundance is a great word. It's literally the opposite of what I was just describing. And it's like there's more opportunities. You said earlier in this conversation, like there's always problems to solve. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're not going to turn the AI on and we're like, I guess we ran out of problems to solve. Like there's
Yeah.
problems always. So, and that means abundance, right? We have tooling that can help us get through this stuff faster, more opportunity for more people that never had that before. So, I think abundance is a great word for that. But Simon, I wanted to say thank you so much. I want to make sure that if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best way they can get in touch with you? What are you working on? Tell us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was a really, really fun conversation. So, my website is simonstern.ca if you want to like see some of the stuff I've worked on. I'm currently building a mobile app called Cutlog, which can measure your body fat from just a couple of pictures using like machine models. And so, looking for beta testers for that if people are interested. And you can find me on Twitter at Simi Stern, Simi Stern. Yeah, at Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is super cool. I think there's a lot of insights for people that we're listening through, and yeah, I think there's an abundant future ahead of us. So thank you for using that word because I think that's going to stick with me for a little while.
Thank you. Appreciate the chat.